Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about percentages, or more specifically, differences in percentages between groups. In other words, does group A have more something or other than group B? So all about percentages today. So this is jamovi session 4. So let's jump straight into it. Now, percentages. We humans are obsessed with percentages. We are obsessed with seeing if something is more, or one group has more, or something like that. Comparing groups on percentages. So we see them everywhere. Job hunting success rate, for example. Hokusei has 97.8%. Hokkai has 91.8%. I think this was a couple of years ago now. Hokusei job success rate. We might compare males and females. 97.8% for males, 97.4% for females. Is this different? Percent of population using Instagram. In Japan, we see 34% of the population using Instagram. In South Korea, we see 39% of the population using Instagram. Percent of population using YouTube. 70% in Japan, 74% in South Korea. Right, but we might want to ask, are these significant differences? Are they meaningful differences? Right, we've looked at statistical differences, or whether the difference in means or averages, whether that is statistically significant or not, using t-tests. We've looked at whether there is a statistically significant relationship between two variables, correlations. And now we're going to look at how to decide if there is a statistical difference between groups on percentages. Now, what kind of evidence can we provide to try to prove whether there is or is not a statistical difference in percentages? This is where the chi-square analysis comes to the rescue. Chi-square analysis, in Japanese kai-nijou. This analysis is what we use to provide evidence for whether there is or is not a statistical difference in percentages between two groups. So we're going to learn about that today. We're going to figure out how to do it, why we do it, and all of that kind of good stuff. So let's jump on through this. So before we jump through too much, just a bit of a review over what we've done so far. Right. So over the last few weeks, we have compared averages between two groups using the t-test. Remember, we had the t-test, we had t, then we had the degrees of freedom equals, then the t-test number, and then we had a p-value that indicated the significance. Correlations, remember, we had the r value, r equals something, and then we had the p-value to show the statistical significance. It's something, right? So for the last couple of weeks, we have learned about providing statistics for evidence to back up our claims that there is some kind of a difference or some kind of a relationship. And this is the same for chi-square. So the chi-square statistic is a statistic that we use to prove or disprove that there is a difference in percentages between two groups. For this one, for chi-square, we say the chi-square, and we've got the degrees of freedom here again, and we've got the chi-square test statistic, just like the t-test statistic here, and then we have the p-value. So when we do chi-square analyses, we end up with these kinds of statistics that we report. Now we use chi-square to compare averages, compare percentages. So we use chi-square to compare percentages. T-test comparing averages, chi-square comparing percentages between two groups. So for example, here's a bit of an example to try to get us thinking a bit about what kinds of applications there might be. So our example here is, why do people use Facebook? Right? When we think about why people might use Facebook, we might think about who they interact with on Facebook. Right? So there are two possible reasons for using Facebook in terms of who people interact with. So some people might use Facebook mainly for meeting new people. Right? That's a possible use of Facebook, right? People might join Facebook groups. They might start their own Facebook groups. They might try to friend a whole bunch of people that they haven't met offline. So that could be one kind of main reason why people use Facebook. On the other hand, some people might just mainly use Facebook for maintaining current relationships. Right? So when we think about the kinds of people that Facebook users interact with on Facebook, we might consider that some people would mainly use Facebook for meeting new people, and some people might mainly use Facebook for maintaining current relationships. So those relationships that people have met or have established offline. So before we carry on, I'd like you to make a hypothesis, and we're going to test this hypothesis. So make a hypothesis in percentages here. So Japan versus the USA. We gave a question in a survey to Facebook users from Japan and Facebook users from the US. And we said to them, what do you use your main SNS account for? And we just focused on Facebook in this case. Mainly for making new friends or mainly for maintaining current friendships? So we asked people, what do you use your main SNS account for? That's their Facebook account. So what do you use your Facebook account for? Mainly for making new friends or mainly for maintaining current friendships? If you had to make a prediction, what do you think the percentages would be like in Japan and the US? So in Japan, mainly for making new friends. What percent of Facebook users in Japan do you think would use Facebook mainly for making new friends? Once again, in Japan, what percentage of Facebook users in Japan do you think would use Facebook mainly for maintaining current friendships? And how about the USA? What percentage of Facebook users in the USA do you think would mainly use Facebook for making new friends? And what percent of Facebook users in the USA would you predict mainly use Facebook for maintaining current friendships? Right? I'd like you to make a prediction. I'd like you to make a hypothesis here that you can test. So maybe write down on a bit of paper now, pause the video, write down a bit of paper your prediction. We're going to test these predictions now, but it's a bit more interesting if you make a prediction before we start. Okay, so pause the video and think about it and make your prediction. Okay, so hopefully you have made your prediction and we can carry on with the analysis to test your prediction. Is it correct or is it incorrect? So to test that hypothesis, we are going to open the data set that we used last week for correlations. So the Facebook selfprom-3.omv. I'm going to download it from this link. This link will be in the description below and also on Moodle. Once again, when you click on that link, you'll be prompted to download the jamovi data file. So I've downloaded it here, and then I click on it, and that will open up jamovi for me. It's on the other screen here, but I'll pull it over. So here we go. We have our self-promotion survey data set here in Jamovi. You'll be familiar with all of these variables here. You've got the self-promotion scale, separate items there. Right at the end here, we've got the self-promotion scale averages, self-promotion merits and demerits scale averages. We're not going to be concerned with those variables today. What we're going to be concerned about today is a variable we haven't really spent much time with at all so far, and that is the fb_perp variable. If we double click on here, then it'll open up the details about this variable. And we see that it's the name is fb_perp, and the description says participants' purpose for using Facebook. Now there's a whole lot of different responses here, but we only gave participants 4 options to respond to this question. They're all in Japanese here. If I open it a little bit wider, we can see it better. So here we go, 1. So if we've got a value of 1 on this question, then this is 見知らぬ人たちとの関係づくり場である. Right? So if somebody mostly uses Facebook for making new friends, then they would choose 1, which is this response here. 2 here, どちらでもあるが見知らぬ人た, and then we lose it here. I'm not sure if we can see more of it. There we go. Yeah, so we just can click on that. どちらもあるが見知らぬ人たちとの関係づくりの役割の方が大きい. So mainly a place for making new relationships. Number 3 on this question here, the third response option, is どちらでもあるが今までの関係を維持したり含めたりする役割の方が大きい. And number 4 here is 今までの関係を維持したり含めたりするための場である. Right, so we've got 1 to 4 here, right? So 1 and 2 are kind of pointing towards Facebook being a place for that person to make new relationships. 3 and 4 on the response options here are kind of pointing towards that person using Facebook mostly to interact with people that they already know. So we want to compare between Japan and the US what percent of people mainly use Facebook to interact with new people, and what percent use Facebook to interact mainly with people that they already know. At the moment here, we've got 4 categories of answers, right? 4 answer options, but we want to just compare 2 categories. So what we're going to do first is we are going to transform this data into a new variable with only 2 levels to the data. At the moment, we've got 4 levels in this variable, but we only want 2. I want to collapse this into just 2 variables. 2 levels. So to do that, we are going to transform this variable into a new variable. So to do that, we want to right-click on the header up here in one of these variables. We want to say Add Variable. Then we want to insert a transformed variable. So if we click on Insert Transformed Variable, then we get a new variable empty at the moment. No data in here. So here, we might want to give a new name to the transformed variable. I'm going to call this FB perp 1.2 because for this variable we're only going to have two levels to the variable. In this variable we have 4 levels. In this variable we're going to have 2 levels. So this is a transformed variable. There's nothing in it at the moment. We might want to give it a description. Facebook user purpose to level. Now we want to click on the source variable drop down here and choose the variable we're going to use, or the variable we're going to transform. So in this case it's Facebook perp, FB perp, and then using transformation we want to create a new transformation. Now we don't need to worry about naming this in any particular way, but we want to click on add recode condition. So here we have if source. So if fb underscore perp is something, then use something here. So if source equals, and if we're doing equals in this case, we don't just use 1 equals, we need to use 2. So if source equal 1, then use 1. Okay, and then add another recode condition. If source equal 2, so that is if the response on this variable fb underscore perp is 2, then use 1. All right, so this will mean that anybody who answered 1 or 2 on Facebook perp gets a 1 in this new variable. Add another recode condition, this time equals 3. So anybody who responded 3 to this Facebook perp variable will get a 2. And then adding one more recode condition, equals 4. And that is also 2. All right, so do you see how we are transforming the Facebook perp, this Facebook perp variable that has 4 levels, we're transforming that into 2 variables. 1 and 2 are going to be transformed into 1, and 3 and 4 will be transformed into 2. Okay, so once we have done that, we should be able to click out of there, and voila. Here we go. This person here, person number 1, responded 3 on the Facebook perp scale here, and their response has been transformed to 2. All right. So what we have now is that 1 on FB perp 1.2, 1 represents people who mostly use Facebook to connect with people that they haven't met before, making new friends. 2 here represents now people who mostly use Facebook to interact with people that they already know. Now that we have 2 levels to this variable, we can use chi-square analysis to figure out what percentage of people, of Facebook users in Japan and the US responded or we can say fit into these 2 categories on this new variable. Okay, so now that we've got our transformed variable, we can close that down, we can close this down, and now we need to go to frequencies. So to do a chi-square in Jamovi, we click on frequencies, and then we are comparing 2 independent groups, so Japan and the US, 2 countries, 2 independent groups. So contingency tables, independent samples, chi-square test of association. Click on that. And then we get shown an interface here where we can start selecting variables. So in the rows column, we want to add country. And then in the columns section, we want to add our newly created transformed variable fb underscore perp underscore 12. So that is our columns thing there. And here we go. We've already got some results here. In our results section, we see that 23 people from Japan we can put into that category of mostly using Facebook to meet new people. 121 people in Japan mostly use Facebook to maintain current friendships. In the USA, 19 people mostly use Facebook to meet new people. 132 people mainly use Facebook to maintain current relationships. Now, of course, just raw numbers like this, you might look at that and say, oh, well, more people in Japan use Facebook to meet new people. But of course, that doesn't make sense. We need to look at percentages. So to do that, we want to click on cells and then add row percentages. And to do that, this gives us, and once we do that, we get some percentages, which gives us a lot more information. So we can see that in Japan, 16% of people said that they used Facebook mainly to meet new people. 84% said they use it to maintain current friendships. In the US, 12.6% said they use it for meeting new people, and 87.4% said that they use Facebook to maintain current relationships. So if we compare, we want to compare Japan and the US and see in which country do people use Facebook more to maintain current friendships. Here we've got 84% in Japan and 87.4% in the US. Now we might be tempted to say, okay, well, the US is 3.4% more than Japan here, so maybe the people in the US use Facebook more to connect with people that they already know, right? To maintain offline relationships. But is this a significant difference? That's where the chi-square test results come into their own. We have a chi-square value, just like the t-test value, chi-square value. We have a degrees of freedom value here, and then the most important bit for our purposes is the p-value. Can you remember what does the value what does the p-value need to be less than in order for it to be considered significant? What number does the p-value need to be less than in order for us to conclude that these differences are significant? I hope most of you are saying less than 0.05. Remember, if the p-value is less than 0.05, then we can say that there is a significant difference between the groups. Right, so here we see that there seems to be some kind of a difference between the groups, but the p-value is larger than 0.05. Right, here the p-value is 0.405, which is larger than 0.05. So in this way, we can conclude that there is no significant difference between the US and Japan on the percentage of people who use Facebook to meet new people or to interact with people that they already know. So this is how we use chi-square to make to produce evidence for or against differences in percentages between two groups. Okay, so this is how we do it. What I would like you guys to do on your own All right, so here we go. Before we do that, so here is a bit more of an explanation of the results. So these are the results from Jamovi. We have the percent for Japan, percent for the US. It depends on what you want to focus on, but here we're focusing on the percentage of people who use Facebook to maintain current relationships. We see the chi-square value, the degrees of freedom, and the p-value. Now, how do we report the results from a chi-square analysis? This is how we do it. It's kind of similar to what you've done already with t-tests and correlations, but this is what it looks like. A chi-square analysis showed that a slightly larger percentage of US Facebook users, n equals 132, here, n equals 132 here. So we've got n equals 132, which we can see is here. The number of Facebook users who use Facebook to maintain current friendships. So a chi-square analysis showed that a slightly larger percentage of US Facebook users, n equals 132, and then the percentage, 87.4%, used Facebook to maintain current friendships than Japan users, but this difference was not significant. And then we list the chi-square results. So we have chi-square in brackets, the degrees of freedom, right? The degrees of freedom here. Then the chi-square value, and then the p-value. Oops, here. So a chi-square analysis showed that a slightly larger percentage of US Facebook users used Facebook to maintain current friendships than Japan users, but this difference was not significant. First half, remember, first half of the results, we give the raw statistical stuff. The difficult to understand numbers. But then, of course, we want to interpret that in a way that most people would understand. So this means, what does this mean? This means that US and Japan Facebook users both mainly use Facebook for maintaining current relationships rather than for making new friends. All right, so we have our first half here, which is giving the raw statistical results, and then the second half here explaining the results in easy to understand language. So what I would like you to do on your own as a bit of an exercise is I would like you to use that data file, and I'd like you to answer what percentage of the sample is male and female in each country, and are those percentages significantly different? So in other words, is there a significant difference in the percentage of males and females when compared between Japan and the US? Right. So on the last slide here, I'll put the slides up as PDF, as PDF on Moodle, and you can use this as a bit of a guide to make your own notes. But I'd like you to write down the number of males in our sample in Japan and what percent they are. So what percent of the sample in Japan is male, then the number of females and what percentage of the sample is female in Japan. Then the same for the US, number and percentage for males, number and percentage for females. Write down the chi-square value, the degrees of freedom, and the p-value, and then write your findings below. So remember, another note, a quick note or a reminder about writing statistical results. In scientific stuff like this, you don't need to be creative. Really, you can just more or less use this wording and change some words, move some things about. expressing results in statistics is pretty dry. So you don't need to think too much about, you don't need to feel as though you are plagiarizing or copying too much if you just use this structure for your results. So using that structure, try to write your findings below in terms of the percent of male and female in the US and Japan in our sample. Okay, so that is your homework, and I look forward to hearing your results the next time that we meet. I'm not sure which week it'll be, but it'll be the week after I post this. Okay, so thank you very much, and good luck.